Tāmaki Makaurau, Tāmaki heringa waka, kei ngā mātā waka o te motu rarau mai ki te hui pōti, ruatakau, ruatakau. Kara hui hui mai. Welcome to the Hui Pōti 2020. I'm Peeni Henare Forbes, and over the next 4 weeks we'll be hosting debates for all 7 of the Māori electorates. This evening we begin in the Big Smoke, Tāmaki Makaurau, the smallest Māori electorate in size but the largest in population. There are currently 38,000 Māori registered to vote in Tāmaki Makaurau, but in 2017 only 59% of eligible voters turned up to the ballot box, the lowest of all 7 electorates. Later in the show we'll be hitting the streets of Tāmaki to find out what the big issues are. Engari matua rā me tūtaki ki ngā kaitono mo te rohi, tuatahi mai ko te mema parimata mo Tāmaki Makaurau, Labour MP for Tāmaki Peeni Henare. Tuarua, ko te kaiarahi takirua o te rōpū kākāriki, Green MP Marama Davidson. Tuatoru, ko te kaiarahi takirua o te Pāti Māori, former MP and Māori Party candidate John Tamihere. Tēnā koutou.
Kia ora.
Ka pai, let's get this party started. I'll begin by asking each of you for your opening statements. Peeni, kei a koe te wā.
Ka tiake rā, e tōku pāpā, e takoto mai nā, aini ka hoki mai tōta mai tikirunga i a koe. Ka tahuri atu a hau ki ngā pae maunga o Tāmaki Makaurau, e oku rangatira tēnā koutou katoa. Ki oku hoa mahi e tūnei, ki tōku tuahine, ki tōku pāpā e tūnei, e mihi atu ana. Kāti, ka tahuri atu a hau ki ngā kaupapa nui o te wāne. Ana, kua pōkai kaha tātou katoa te iwi Māori ki roto o Tāmaki, ki roto i ngā marama e whitu kua pahurea kenei. He nui ngā mahi i oti nei a mātou, engari, kei te kōkiri tonu mātou, oti rā tātou katoa ki ngā pai tawhiti kei mua i a tātou. Nōku te honore, kua tū he mema mō koutou ki roto i ngātou hoi no tāku. Hei inoi atu ki a koutou, kia tautoko tonu mai mātou me te premier, ki ngā angi tū, me te pai tawhiti i wawatahia ai, e o tātou mātua, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Marama.
Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koutou o kuhua, tēnā koe mihi. Wahine Māori have the solutions to heal our planet and our people. We are at the front lines of fighting for te tiriti justice, of protecting our whenua, our wai, our mokopuna and our tamariki. We are at the front lines of fighting for decent housing, decent income, workers' rights, fair pay. We are at the front line fighting against racism across all of our systems, fighting for healthcare and education. It is a driver of my political responsibility to stay connected to those collective wahine-led movements because they have the enduring solutions to address the big crises, the big problems that our whānau are wanting to solve. I am asking for your candidate vote and your party vote for me and for the Green Party. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Ka pai, kei a koe, John.
Kia ora, hui hui mai rā tātou katoa. Nō Ngāti Porou, me whakatohe hoki, ki te mihi ki a kōtau, ki te mihi ki a kōrua mō ngā iho mā. I'm standing as co-leader for the Māori Party. Like my colleagues here, they've got the best interests of our people at heart. But basically, I report solely to our Māori constituents. I don't have to go into a caucus where Pākehā people can outvote me. That's the difference between the 3 of us. Good people, 3 good people, but there's only 1 person that reports directly to our Māori people. And so tonight you're going to hear a lot of talkback liberation in regard to Māori-related matters because we are unapologetically, totally and assuredly Māori. And that surely must be the way we're going to be in advancing an enduring Māori political movement that one day will understand and believe in its mana and its capability and its capacity to actually change governments. And in first past the post and in MMP, the Māori vote has determined who holds the treasurer's benches, but never has it stood enough to get our fair share. So how do I kia koutou?
Kia ora. Rawe e rā kōrero katoa. Now, before we get underway, we sent Billy Joe Ropiha out on the streets of Tāmaki to talk to the voters about the issues that matter most to them.
Kia ora tātou, I am Billy Joe Hoheparopiha and I'm here in the most populous electorate, Tāmaki Makaurau.
Yes, yes, y'all. Yes, yes, y'all. Yes, y'all. Yes, yes, y'all.
We're here to find out what are the pressing issues for whānau. It's currently alert level 2.5, so not too many people around the streets. But you know what? Let's go find them. What's the big issues for Māori and our Pacifica whānau these days, whānau?
Losing our jobs, land, basically everything that we want.
Cigarettes are killing more people than marijuana. Alcohol's killing more people than marijuana. People angry, have a little bit of a toke, and they all good. They mellow, or too paranoid, whatever, and then they get the munchies. No.
Thanks, whānau. Cleaning up Auckland, Tāmaki Makaurau. Love it. Essential workers right there.
That is what I would love, to keep Māori at school. The numbers drop off significantly from year 10. So keeping them at school is really, really difficult. I would personally love to have more Māori teachers at school who are fluent in Te Reo Māori, because a lot of the teachers that are going into mainstream Māori schools are getting burnt out.
You look way beautiful without that mask.
The big issue for my age group, or what I've seen with a lot of my friends anyway, is housing, especially in Auckland. Getting into a house or even just coming up with a deposit to be able to do that.
My household at the moment, we've got 3 generations. Yeah, and we're finding it pretty hard, especially with that during the lockdown, unable to work and not getting enough support.
Job security and that, a lot of our whānau are kind of last hired, first fired.
My mother, she's lost her job at the moment, so she's finding it hard because she's staying on her own.
I'm concerned about the economy. You're locking down with COVID and everything.
Some of our younger ones, their generation, is going to be paying for what's happening. So we as elders need to sit beside them and listen to them.
16 is a reasonable age to vote. I think kids do have rights to express on who they want and what party they want.
Politicians you have voted in, do something. Get yourself to the table to make a difference. You can't do anything on the backbench.
So there you have it. We've heard from Tāmaki Makaurau electorate, and some of the big issues are housing, jobs and the failing economy. So what are you going to do about it?
Housing, jobs and the failing economy. Marama, I'll come to you first.
Well, firstly, when our jobs are so precarious, what we absolutely need is a strong income support system, which the Greens have announced in our Poverty Action Plan. It'll make sure that everyone not in full-time paid employment will have a guaranteed minimum income that our whānau can rely on. They don't have to panic and stress so much about losing jobs. Also, we need to make sure that we are prioritising women, and especially wahine and Pacific and Māori women, who are under threat from the biggest job losses that we are currently seeing. And so having a wahine Māori Pacific women lens over restoring our jobs, creating our jobs and making sure we've got fair workers' rights, pay and conditions is going to be essential, because it's our women who are bearing the brunt of job losses at the moment as well. Thirdly, we've got a lot of job options in the green plans, like with building housing, making sure they're insulated, solar energy, clean energy jobs, jobs for nature, jobs in high-tech and sustainable industries is where we need to go as well.
John, I'll come to you. The Māori Party is proposing raising the minimum wage to $25 an hour. That's well and good, but what about job creation? What's your ideas?
We know, and we've delivered our marquee policy, is whānau tahi. Our families must come first. And that is 25% of all government contracts that are coming out are targeted towards Māori contractors. That's across the whole of the state service. That's from health, welfare, education, justice and housing. If we don't get affirmative procurement like Afro-Americans get, like Aboriginals, brothers and sisters in Australia get, we will be locked into the bottom end of town. And so we deserve this entitlement and this right because it's a treaty entitlement right to be treated as equal in regard to citizenship. So one of our biggest policies is to break open our embedded nature at the bottom of town and ensure that all Māori get an opportunity not to be first fired, last hired, not to be labourers, but actually to have aspirations to be bosses. And to do that, that is our key marquee policy moving on ensuring that we get jobs. You know, COVID's an opportunity for us. COVID isn't for us to go back to an old world where we were first fired, last hired, and where we are at the bottom end of society on incomes. And so we've got to change it up, and we deserve a shot across the whole of government at 25% of the lot.
We're talking procurement, we've heard about benefits. The response to job losses from this government was to introduce COVID benefit scheme, almost twice that of the job seeker benefit. You rejected criticism at the time that it was unfair to call it a two-tier benefit system, but now new figures show that Pākehā are 3 times as likely to access that than Māori. How has that been fair, and what do we do from here on in?
Well, we made it clear that the best economic response had to be a health response first and foremost. So through COVID-19, we appreciated that there was going to be an economic blow. We did our best to cushion that, and we did that through the way of the wage subsidy, which Māori organisations, Pākehā businesses, they all utilised that to good effect. And the feedback we've got has been...
But not equally. That's what we're finding now. So
the feedback to us is actually quite positive, that it's what sustained them through that period. I've been out and met with a number of Māori businesses who hire our people and have been quite clear that they couldn't have done it without it. And now we've got other incentives there to allow them to borrow down money to support their businesses, to innovate and create jobs.
What's next? Job creation. We can't pay the COVID forever, so what's next?
Oh, well, we were quite clear too, before COVID even, that we could create apprenticeships, create new career pathways for our people, whether you're young or old. We hear about the job losses, so we want to provide opportunities like mana and mahi, he pautama rangatahi for our young people. It's part of our 5-point plan in a post-COVID world. It's jobs, jobs and jobs.
Before we go to the break, I just want to say, ko te wiki o te reo Māori, I'm going to give you all one idea how you would revitalise te reo Māori. John, do you want to start?
Yeah, look, Rawiri Waititi announced our policy, as you know, at the beginning of the week. And everywhere we go, we need our own Māori Health Funding Authority. We need our own Māori Reo Protection Authority that reaches right across the whole of government and the whole of society in regard to competency, capability, and actually investing in lifting the language. It's an official language. It has to have the same mana as the English language. We have to get equality. And until we get equality, these are the things that we will continue to advance.
That's 5 ideas. I'll come to Peeni for one. Actually, the Māori Party wants to rename New Zealand Aotearoa. Would you support that?
I already call New Zealand Aotearoa.
Kapai, give me one idea.
My kaupapa is to reinstate traditional wānanga, not wānanga that we see in terms of an institution, but wānanga that actually not only teaches te reo, but what it means.
Kapai, Marama.
One thing the government can do is, at the moment, it is offering, in a COVID response, free training for job creation. The Greens announced on Monday that we would like to see training more kaiako teachers and te reo teachers as part of the free training that is being offered. That would help step us towards being capable of having te reo Māori as a core subject through to Year 10, which is also a Green Party push as well.
Ka pai, through education. Kia mai tonu mai rā, te te tira. We're going to take a very quick break and we'll be back with more soon. Auraki mai anō, you're watching the Hui Pōti 2020, where candidates for Tāmaki Makaurau are debating the big issues. Kei te taiwhanga pāpāho ko Peeni Henare o Reipa, rātou ko Marama Davidson o Te Rōpū Kākāriki, ko John Tamihere o Te Pāti Māori. Well, let's get into it. John, Mokopuna Māori, your policy, it's a separate entity specifically for tamariki Māori run by Māori. If you were given the reins and the money, how would a model in West Auckland look?
Oh, well, we've already got a model in Te Whānau Waipareta. What we haven't been allowed to do across the whole of the country, not just in Waipareta, is to have a relationship with an organisation that rates us, honours us and respects us. And so as a consequence, what it does is it drives wedges in families, it drives wedges in our communities, and it is reluctant at best and resistant to doing any business with Māori up and down the country. So what we had to announce, as we all do, whānau order showed us that our communities can stand up and look after themselves. Our time has come. Why do we need so many Pākehās standing over us, regulating us? You see, our people are a solution waiting to happen, not a problem to be punished. And if we change the dial into a whānau order process with Oranga Tamariki, look, let them look after their own Pākehā kids, right? We are now ready, willing and able to look after our own. And we will solve a lot of problems. We will not destroy families, we will rebuild them. And those babies and those young mothers, they need protection. They don't need to be put down all the time. And it's a difference, a total difference in care and in support. Do we have problems on the street and do we need to fix them? Yeah, yes, we do. 5
flawed reports in the last year for Oranga Tamariki. You know, we're talking here about a model by Māori for Māori. You're the whānau ora minister. Do you see sense? You know, do you like that idea?
Most definitely, it's a no-brainer to me. Not only
how can we move it? You know, quick. How can we get there more quickly?
Yeah, look, and we are. There's going to be an announcement soon that will look into the way we extend the reach into, in particular, looking after our tamariki before they fall into the state system. The state system I accept is certainly failing our people and much more work needs to be done. I will say too that Minister Martin, over the past her tenure as the Minister for Oranga Tamariki, has confronted some hard questions and I think has done a reasonable job, but we've got lots more mahi to do, not a shadow of a doubt about that.
Section 7AA, you know, the treaty clause in there, it's commendable, but so far in a year there's just 4 partnerships. Are they moving quick enough for you?
Well, no. They're not moving quick enough for our tamariki. That should be the answer there. Look, but we know that some iwi have capacity that other iwi don't, and they're further along in the journey. But to John's point, and I agree, whānau order is the way to do that, and we can get them even before they get into the state system. So I'm excited about the future of what we can do here, but we all know, all 3 of us know, there's some hard work to be done.
You've talked about some Māori frameworks in the past. What are your ideas? Can you work with these?
Yeah. Māori women, Māori whānau have been very clear. We need support, not separation, and the stealing of our babies by the state has absolutely entrenched ongoing generational trauma. Māori women and Māori whānau have been very clear. We are fighting to keep all our tamariki safe. That is the goal. And those are the grassroots solutions, the whānau wraparound support that needs to be properly resourced and empowered to do the work that we know that we can do and have been calling for decades.
And Minister Martin also says, you know, that Oranga Tamariki was taking babies unnecessarily.
Yes.
What do we do holistically about restoring the mana to those whānau, John, now?
Well, you see, what you don't appreciate, Mihi, is that it's thousands. You know, every family, every Māori whānau have been touched by the aggressive imposition of this agency, by getting pimped out wrongly, and then all of a sudden regulators arriving at the door. And so our people are rightly upset, deeply angry about this, and so are we. Okay, so we just have to stop this agency in its tracks and devolve its capability and capacity into the hands of our own aunties, of our own mothers.
In the last year, Peeni, to the credit of Oranga Tamariki, the numbers of Māori tamariki going into Oranga Tamariki have dropped. But, you know, as John and Marama say, what are your whakaaro around, you know, restoring the mana to whānau who have been affected by it?
Well, look, as Minister for Whānau Ora, that's the answer, whānau ora. So, by all means, we should be pushing for kaupapa Māori to get our tamariki back in amongst their whānau and even protect them in some instances against some of the not so good practices in whānau. But we do that by supporting whānau. That's how we ensure that these young people, wherever they might be, return to a home that loves them and cares for them from a community. And I think, look, all three of us are on the same page here. It's a no-brainer that whānau are the answer.
We're going to switch to COVID-19 just quickly because, you know, in the last cluster that we see how dangerous this virus is for Māori and Pacifica. Specifically, I'm going to stay with you, Peeni. This is your seat. You're a highly ranked Minister of the Crown. You know, what have we done here in Tāmaki to protect these vulnerable communities?
Oh, look, and once again, whānau ora, and I want to acknowledge John and the whānau in whānau ora across Tāmaki Makaurau who have reached out to thousands and thousands of whānau, not just those who they've already been in contact with, but whānau who have fallen on hard times during COVID-19. So in order to protect those communities, we've got to support them. Whānau Ora's done that. We've done it through a number of Māori health providers that simply just get out there and do the mahi amongst our
Whānau
families.
Ora seems to be the solution. John and Marama, have you got an initiative you think that might kind of wrap around these vulnerable communities?
Yeah, of course we have. But here's the problem we've got. We've got multiple Crown agencies overfunded, underperforming, not measured. And Peeni will tell you that we are under the gun and under the pump all the time, audited, reviewed all the time. If Pākehā were as audited and reviewed as much as us, with the massive resources they're getting, they would not pass muster. We have to start to honour our people out on the street. They're doing an outstanding job and they've got to be resourced better.
Marama, just quickly.
Yeah, my beautiful Marirewa community marae, Marirewa marae, is an example of the strength and the trust that the government needs to continue to have in our local grassroots organisations. They are the ones who know our people, who know what we need. They are ones who can quickly gain the trust and put the health mahi first to keep our people safe. We need to absolutely see more of the resource and the support going down to our grassroots local organisations.
And we're going to meet some of them later in the program. Next, the people of Tāmaki Makaurau get to put their questions to these candidates. Nō reira, hoki mai anō. Hoki mai anō, you're watching the Hui Pōti 2020 Tāmaki Makaurau. Now, last week we headed out to Māngere to see if the community had a question for the candidates, and anei te pātai.
Kia ora, Laina Hōtene tōku ingoa, Ngāti Awa, Ngāti Pū Keko Au. Welcome to Papatūnuku Kōkiri Marae. We're on a journey of growing our own food and knowing where our food comes from. The kai that we grow here, hua parakore kai, we hand out to our community people in need. There's been a high demand in kai as of late because of the COVID and people losing their jobs and less income coming into the family, and it's heartbreaking to see the lines and the amount of people that are coming to the marae wanting support and wanting food boxes. So we've had a water shortage here at Papatunuku Kōkiri Marae, and I want to know, how are you going to address the water issue that we have here in Auckland?
Peeni, kei a koe.
Oh, look, first acknowledge the good work that they've done, and they're right. Whānau is streaming to community organisations in marae for support. As a government, we stepped right in to help fund those kinds of operations. We knew that we couldn't do it, and as Marama has pointed out already, the community can. To the question around securing water, look, I think the bold move forward is reshaping the RMA. The ability for better water storage in and across Tāmaki Makaurau, it's been absolutely abysmal, long before even I became a Member of Parliament. So we've got a significant job to redo the RMA to make sure that water storage facilities here in Tāmaki Makaurau better serve us and secure us into the future. We know that the weather and the climate's changing. As Civil Defence Minister, I've seen more droughts than I've seen floods, and that's not good enough. So better water storage by far, and that's got to be funded, and the legislation has to change for that to happen.
Marama, also in that clip we saw Marakai. Last month the Ministry of Social Development had spent $8.3 million on food parcels. That's not sustainable, and less Māori are in home ownership, so they don't have access to gardens or growing. You know, how would you demonstrate that food sovereignty is a priority? What have you done in the last 3 years to prove that?
Firstly, can I say we need to stop developing over the last bits of our fertile growing soils, especially in Tāmaki Makaurau. We just cannot continue to gobble that up. That is our place for food sovereignty. We, on Saturday, a few days ago, announced our farming policy, where we would encourage more funding and support for gardens in schools, for gardens for marae, for gardens in community, and that will be a really important part of that food sovereignty. There was something, progressive home ownership is a strong policy for the Greens. More people who can't afford a deposit can actually put down roots literally and include things like people being able to grow their gardens. But Papatuanuku ki Kōkiri Marae is an example of the leadership that our community and whānau will continue to need, and we need to replicate that, and there's many more examples all around Aotearoa, because it's no good just having the plot of whenua. Our whānau also need the mātauranga as well.
How about the current water crisis? Aucklanders are using more and more water from the Waikato River. How sustainable is that?
Well, let's cut to the chase about water. Okay, I want to go straight to the issue of ownership. Okay, yeah, never has our right, our native customary title been extinguished to water. So if Māori had control of water, we wouldn't be running out of it. We're the greatest custodians. Don't worry about the Greens, God bless you. we're the kaitiakitanga tuturus. So I just wanted to say, we own the water. And I'm the only person here that's going to stand here and say that to you. We own it because we've never had our right and it's extinguished. And the day, because see, this whole country is driven off the theft of Māori assets. That's how we've got wealthy people. So if we go back to first principles, and that is we be the kaitiakitanga of our water, wherever the water comes and wherever the water goes, Māori have the interest. The day that the Crown monetarises it, sends it offshore, monetarising it, or gives others the mana of our water to monetarise it, they're stealing our assets and our property.
Peeni, does John have a point there? And who owns the water?
Oh, look, we've made our position quite clear that Māori, without a shadow of a doubt, have special interests in the water. It is a very complicated scenario, and I know that Minister Parker is actually working really well with iwi.
If we have special interests, do we own it?
Well, if you have a look at the Waikato River, for example, it's legislated that way. So too is the Wanganui River. And Māori, has already been pointed out, are custodians there. So we're already there. But right across the country, there is a big job here to make sure that water sovereignty, for want of a better expression, is protected, and we've made it clear that Māori have interests.
Marama?
Yes, absolutely, especially through Te Tiriti, which guarantees tū mana whenua, the tino rangatiratanga over our people, our water, our soils and our land. And so we've always been very clear as well that Māori absolutely have customary, proprietary and kaitiaki rights. That in effect is actually ownership, and if that's a Pākehā way of understanding rights over water, then that's what we have to be clear about as well.
Yeah, but you see, the Pākehās and their parties wouldn't agree. And I accept I accept my colleague's position, right?
No, that's the Green
that,
Party position.
Well, why didn't you assert it over water with Parker in the last 3 years?
Yes, we absolutely need to change the law that allows for commercial offshore water.
I want to go to another resource, mining. What's the Māori Party's position on mining?
Oh, well, we've delivered that policy, and we'll be banning all mining, particularly in the conservation estate, particularly in around Māori freehold land. Hang on, until such time as our people determine otherwise. And the final thing is out in the marine reserves and the like, where our kapatakaias for our moana kai. So that's a very clear statement of conservation on behalf of Māori people.
Since 2017, the government has issued mining licences across more than 150,000 acres of conservation land. How do you sell your anti-mining policies to your voters when, you know, the reality is you can't stop it?
Yeah, and that's where I would like to see more Green MPs who do have a very clear position. We're unable to get that resistance against mining, especially on conservation land, across the line when we are only 8 MPs. And we've been very, very clear, especially working with mana whenua and iwi over that rohe. But absolutely, we've been firm that we need to stop mining on conservation land.
Tell us about the RMA reform. Looks to have Māori sitting on hearing panels. You know, how can we guarantee that Māori do have some mana there?
By voting in a strong Māori caucus, and that's the only way, right? So we know that in the past RMA have done some tinkering to allow for a Māori perspective or a Māori view. That's simply not good enough. And certainly from my perspective and what the Māori caucus are pushing is that stronger rights for Māori in the RMA is a must and will not proceed without our support unless that happens.
John? Do you agree with the new proposal for the RMA?
Oh, look, I believe in the sentiments being expressed by my 2 colleagues here. But I've been in a caucus where I've been outvoted by the Pākehās in the Labour Party. And so I agree tonight that these are their best sentiments, but I don't accept that the best will of the Māori caucus and the Labour Party is ever going to get it through. And that's why you need to vote in a liberated Māori voice from the Māori Party.
Do you have confidence in what's suggested in the RMA reform, given, you know, if you were to go back into government with the Labour Party?
It's a really good example of offshore water bottling, because we actually want to change the law that is currently allowing that, and that is wrong, absolutely. And I stand with iwi who are opposed to that, but unfortunately the law stands the way at the moment it does, and we want to change that. And the reforms to the RMA, what I've suggested, we want to make sure they strengthen te tiriti, they strengthen the public democratic participation, and they have bottom environmental lines. And that would also help fix up the laws that currently allow offshore water bottling, for example.
Ka pai. It's getting interesting now. Ka hoki mai te hui a koe nei. Well done. Kei te mātakitaki koutou I te whakataetai mo te rohi pōti o Tāmaki Makaurau. Time to take a look now at our second question from the Electorate.
Kia ora whānau. My name is Tony Niamia. I'm a school teacher at Te Atatu Intermediate in West Auckland. Been working closely with the Taiteaka document in terms of my planning as a teacher, in terms of how am I embedding that document in my planning. In other words, how am I supporting Māori succeeding as Māori? My real concern at the moment is government decentralising itself by saying, hey, listen guys, here's a really good policy, we think that you should do it. But it's left to the responsibility of the principal and obviously teachers. I have a problem in terms of, are we the only school that's delivering it? Having the document's nice, but is it actually doing what it's meant to doing? Are people actually using it? Who's checking in on this stuff? So my question to you guys is this: what are you actually going to do so that this document's being implemented across all schools in Aotearoa?
So that resource Tātai Ako is a tool to assist teachers to become more culturally competent with Māori learners. Super important, as we know, that Pākehā teachers understand our Māori learners. But John, are we asking too much of Māori teachers who ultimately will become the teachers of the teachers?
Yeah, but of course they do, but they're not just the teachers of the teachers. They're the social worker, they're the health worker, they're the education worker, and they're the liaison between the community. And so they're underpaid, under-resourced, and they need to be upgraded. But the Māori Party policy on education is delivered tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. by Debbie Ngarewa-Paka. There's three.
So it's a peak.
Well, there's three prongs on that. The first is setting up our own Māori Education Authority that has reach and spread across the whole of education. Not just the reo, but across mainstream where the majority of our babies are, to determine and upgrade decile 1 to 5 schools. See, our babies don't fail because they're stupid or they're dumb or they're thick. They fail because they're impoverished in backgrounds. They don't have enough data to afford. They don't have enough devices. And so unless we can bridge those gaps, decile 6 to 10 kids, mainly white ones, are going to do a lot better, you see, and we've got this huge inequality divide.
I'm going to let you only give me one of your tips for tomorrow's thing and move on to Marama. About Tātai Ako, it's a great tool there, it's a great initiative, but like we heard in there, can we trust schools to deliver that?
No, schools need to be accountable. And again, Māori women have been very clear that we need to end the systemic racism across all of our schools and casual racism that our tamariki Māori are subject to every single day.
So are you suggesting we measure and penalise schools?
Yes, it cannot just be a voluntary tool that schools get to take up if they feel like it. Schools need to be accountable. Schools need to be accountable to racism. So we need to come up with a central across education tool to keep schools accountable, measure it, keep track of it, and then put in place plans to rectify it when it continues to happen.
So Peeni, would you support that? And we know teachers who are more skilled or hold higher degrees are paid more. So, you know, will this government, as it upskills mainstream teachers with, you know, acknowledge financially that Māori teachers have mātauranga Māori and perhaps not a degree for it?
Well, just this morning we released our education policy, and which is one of my favourite ones. For those, and all parents will understand that their kids go to a school of a certain decile, we're saying remove the decile framework and actually fund schools on an equity framework, one that simply says that this school has higher need, so we need to invest more into the school. So that was announced this morning by the Labour Party. And to the second part of second part of your question, yes, most definitely. I mentioned earlier that mātauranga Māori and wānanga is actually, I think, at least for me, really powerful. We invested in Te Kawa Matakura to grow that amongst our people, from young people, so that before they even get to the Pākehā tertiary institutions, they've got a wānanga or te kauwairunga, which is
But you're talking about teachers that already want to learn that. We're talking about mainstream teachers who may not really care about this kind of stuff, and you're basically giving them a tool and saying, you fellas do it.
Well, no, we've committed to Te Ahu o Te Reo Māori, which will see resources and support and teaching for those who want to learn Te Reo Māori, whether you're Māori or Pākehā. We've already put through over 1,000 teachers on that. We've got more work to go.
Would you support, you know, financially rewarding Māori teachers who may have mātauranga Māori who will probably have to support their Pākehā teachers?
Well, look, like I said, I support mātauranga Māori, always have. I grew up in that mātauranga Māori world. So where we can recognise that, there are pay equity issues amongst our teachers, from early childcare, and the gap between them and schools are already there, and we announced this morning that we'd close those gaps.
I want to segue to trades now. The Māori Party initiated trades training courses for Māori. A recent report showed 76,000 Māori students found too many were leaving to sit low-level qualifications at private companies. Did that policy that the Māori Party implement simply create a private industry at the cost of our kids?
It did at one level, and that's been the reason why is because we never had a affirmative procurement program at one end of it, where a lot of employers and contractors see value in employing Māori people, holding on to the employment of those Māori people and not using our trade trainees as low-class labour. And as soon as the business goes down, we're first out. So
did the Māori Party fail because you were at the table and you didn't put it in place?
No. You can't say it failed. What you can say is...
Failed to implement the end.
Well, what's the system at the moment? It's still failing under Labour. So what we're trying to say in this election is give us a procurement side where our contractors, where our builders, where our developers get a leg up in regard to affirmative action, and then all of our kids will be able to be taken into levels of contracting that give them their 3-year total deal till they come out as trades.
Marama, you know, how's this been allowed to happen? We have tamariki leaving schools with large debts, and they're no better off than, you know, tamariki that stayed at school. You talk about the measurement. Do we need to bring back closing the gaps or something similar to that?
Well, again, what goes on outside of the school gates is always going to be really important. That in itself will set up our tamariki for having a higher quality education experience. So that's why we've got to get our housing right, our incomes, our jobs, workers' rights and pay, our healthcare. We've got to get all of that right as well, because that is massive inequity issues just in there. As well as making sure our tamariki are going to be equipped for a world that protects its climate, its environment, and looks after everyone, not just the few. That's the training that we're going to need to support all of our children.
We're all talking about measuring the failings or the successes here, and that research here, Awa Ararau, was done by Waikato Tainui and Burl. So why is it being left to iwi to, you know, put the resources in to find these holes?
Oh, look, iwi have a role to play, and we said that also with our announcement about history in schools, that iwi must lead these things because only iwi know those stories, they know that history.
Well, if not for iwi, how would we know that there were such disparities in this in the trade trades?
Long before that review, we knew those inequities were there, and we see it. We grew up in that system.
Yeah, but
I grew up in that system.
In the last 3 years, what kind of measurements have you put in place so that we're not wasting money like that?
Like I've just said, we need to have a more equitable funding system and one that measures how those outcomes are reached through school. But I take the point too of my tuahine Marama here, that if we're only simply measuring the school, then we're going to fail in other places.
So closing the gaps, you were in government when they had that. Would you like to bring that back? Is that something that would work?
Well, closing the gaps was our Māori caucus in the Labour Party those days, with Parikura leading, had that. It got destroyed by the Labour Party because Brash attacked it, if you recall. And it was deemed as preferencing...
We're running out of time, so something similar to that.
Yes,
we all agree measuring is
anything that's deemed preferencing Māori rather than fixing a problem is put down.
Kia ora. Kia mau tonu mai rā, te tiro. We're going to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to ask our candidates about their positions on the upcoming cannabis and euthanasia referendums. Auraki mai anō. Well, this election, New Zealanders will be asked to cast 2 extra votes with referendums on both decriminalising the personal use of cannabis and euthanasia. Both will have significant consequences for Māori. So where do our candidates stand on these issues? Let's find out. Let's start with cannabis. Peeni, are you a yes or a no?
I'll be voting yes, it's a health concern.
And Marama?
It's an easy yes for me as well as health. It's also ending the racism in the law that is applied.
John?
We'll be voting yes for decriminalisation. The real question was legalisation. There's a difference.
And euthanasia, starting with you, Peeni?
I've made my position clear, it's a yes.
Marama?
I'm going to support, but I want to be really clear that we have got to make sure palliative care, ending systemic racism in our health system, and no further stigmatising of our people who are disabled and from the disability community.
Kia ora, John?
For all the reasons just expressed, it's actually the Kill the Māori bill if you don't watch it. There's not enough belts and braces around it. Our people are unskilled, uninformed, and as soon as they get driven into it, right now people are having non-resus applications put before them under great stress without whānau support, non-resus. And if that's what they're doing to us now, can you imagine what they're going to do to us under this piece of legislation? So we need greater protections before this bill goes through anywhere.
So no?
No.
No, kia ora. I have enough time to do one more round. I'm going to ask, Marama, you were one of the first politicians in Parliament to take the front lines at Ihu Mātau. How do the Greens want this resolved?
And it was only because of the kaitiaki that Fletcher was stopped. And I will never stop giving big mihi to them, and I was proud to support that movement over many years. I would like to make sure that it is all mana whenua concerned that are at the table discussing a peaceful solution, and I know that's the kōrero that is continuing to happen.
It's the bastion point of our times, Peeni. We've got many Māori ministers and a leadership that promotes te tiriti kōrero. Why hasn't it been resolved?
Look, it's been difficult, but we're committed to resolving it. We've made that clear from the beginning, actually, when the Prime Minister literally stepped in and said Kāti.
What was the difficult part?
Oh, look, there are multiple players at the table here. We've heard mana whenua, Fletcher's, government, council. We're committed to resolving this without a shadow of a doubt, and you'll hear more from our Prime Minister soon. I'm not going to talk about New Zealand first. I'm not here for them.
John, the audience, if the audience is as old as me, they will remember that you were once a Labour MP and you voted for foreshore and seabed legislation, despite 20,000 people marching to the front door telling you not to.
So did Nanaia Mahuta.
Do you regret
Hang on,
that?
so did Nanaia Mahuta, who's still in the party today.
Do you regret it?
No, I don't, because in Parliament, what you've got to do is get the best possible result in the worst possible moments for your people. But going back to Ihu Mātau, let's cut to the chase on that. It was stolen property. We all know that. Should be handed back. It's pretty simple, and it's not complicated, and there's not all these sorts of players around.
What about the foreshore and seabed? Should that be handed back too?
Well, have a look at the present legislation. It's no better than the 2004 legislation. So, of course, the Māori Party will have to amend the 2011 legislation.
It was the Māori Party's legislation.
Handing it back to... Here's the problem with all the laws that have been passed, and these guys have sat there and done nothing in the last 3 years, Labour, right? There are a range of laws that have come in that have stolen land, have confiscated land under legal mandate. You know, mining licences in the Hauraki were turned into freehold titles in the dead of night through a piece of legislation. That doesn't make it right.
OK, let's be a koha, not a hoha. This is my final round. Just quickly, what would you like to change if you made it back in for the next 3 years?
Without a doubt, more housing.
Our whānau need a livable income that they can live with dignity and care for their families with. We need to increase our lowest incomes and core benefit rates.
John?
Yeah, mana up Māori participation from income, housing, right across. 50% of social housing waiting on a list right now. It's a disgrace. And others are coming in 5 minutes ago and getting our houses. Unacceptable.
I'm going to give you a second round because we've still got time. So give me your second thing you'd like to be remembered for in Parliament.
Oh, a far better health system that meets the
Would it be a separate entity?
Yes, I've been clear on that. There needs to be a separate Māori health authority, and we need to design that and develop it with our Māori people.
And Marama, if you had a second go?
But it's not the health authority that Heather Simpson was recommending in her review. It's a independent, fully resourced, fully empowered health authority that the Māori experts of that report wanted to prioritise.
So if it wasn't the Heather Simpson's idea, what would it be?
The authoritative, fully resourced, independent Māori authority that the experts on that review did actually want to be prioritised. Unfortunately, that didn't happen.
I know what you're going to say, but say it anyway.
Well, we would have Māori authorities across the whole of government, not just in health, welfare, education, justice, housing. And because the mainstream system continues to treat us second-class citizens. So to get a first-class citizen, you have to have
Would we have
equality.
Māori ministers? Would they all have Māori ministers?
Not necessarily. It depends how it's packaged. And I don't have the gift of that. So you're going to have to vote Māori Party first before you can get an answer to that.
Ka pai. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou. Ngā tō whakaihu waka Peeni, koutou ko Marama, ko John. Tēnā koutou. Thanks for watching Hui Hoppers. Join us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. for Hauraki Waikato. Labour's Nanaia Mahuta and the Māori Party's Donna Pōkere Phillips will be here to debate all the big issues in their electorate. Nō reira, ko hikina te hui, no horo mai rā. The Hui is made with support from New Zealand On Air.